everyone. I'm so excited to be here today, and especially this topic. We're going to be talking about different plant medicine, and I'm here with two returning guests, Ariel Szabo and Athena Desai. And these are two local practitioners to me in Massachusetts, which I have adore and love working with, and just being in the community with, and everything like that. But they have a ton of experience just with understanding plant medicine and spirituality and everything behind that. So to get started though, I would love it if you could both give a brief introduction to, what it is, what your modality is. And then we can start getting into discussions about the fun stuff.
Ooh.
You want to start, Ariel?
Okay, sure. Hi. My name's Ariel, and I really support people in cultivating sacred intimacy with themselves, with other people, with plants, with the natural world. I'm certified as a somatic sex educator, a sexological body worker, and a somatic psychedelic therapist. And I offer one-on-one group sessions and circles in Salem, some of which I co-facilitate with Athena. And I also facilitate plant medicine retreats in Peru.
Yes.
Yeah, amazing stuff. And I am a holistic trauma specialist. So some of my tools are Chinese medicine, in acupuncture, and herbal medicine. I'm a Reiki master and a trauma-informed yoga teacher. And I also do prep and integration work and facilitation work with sacred plant medicine.
Yay. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. And so just to kick off the conversation, I know that plant medicine in general is becoming like a more mainstream topic. More and more people are bringing it up, talking about it in healing senses. And so what is it that you would want people to know about plant medicine? And maybe then we can touch on, there's so much to touch on with plant medicine, but we'll start there.
It's a big question. I think the first place I like to start is to ask people to consider that they're entering into a sacred relationship with a spirit consciousness, right? Which is a very different idea from the way that we tend to interact with nature in modern Western culture. Not just consuming something in a transactional way, although it can be done that way to great effect. It can still be a helpful therapeutic experience, but what I find rich and what helps you really learn about the universe is entering into a sacred relationship with that medicine and with the lineages that hold those medicines up, so that you can learn more about yourself in life. What do you think, Ariel?
Yeah, I mean, I am so right there with you. It's really about, like, at least the way that I approach it, it's really about cultivating a relationship with a teacher. And each plant or fungi, they really have their own personality, their own really specific ways of teaching, set of wisdom. And yeah, I think the way that we are often taught to approach most healing modalities in our Western culture is that, like, it's just something that's going to, like, fix us, do something to us, do something for us. People are always looking for that magic bullet that's just going to, like, finally everything will be done and fixed, right? But really approaching it as a relationship. And that also supports people in taking back their own agency in the process.
Okay. No, I love that in the way you describe it. And I mean, I'm in, like, I am one of those people who started off being like, I'm looking for that magic pill and like what not magic pill, but like I've
Yeah.
obviously take a holistic approach, but I'm like, is plant medicine going to be the thing that's just going to make me better
Well,
and stuff?
wouldn't that be nice if we literally could just take a pill that made everything better?
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, like even on this path, we still want to not experience pain, right? Like that would be nice.
Yep.
But I feel like the path in this context help you start relating and orienting yourself towards pain, towards whatever happens that's difficult, just in a completely different way, so that it's a different revolving door. And you actually are really gaining wisdom, gaining your own medicine and your own transformation as you go along.
Yep. Yep. And I guess too, I have a question, actually two questions on that, and I'm gonna remember, try not to forget them. But one is um for people who are just learning about it and been like, oh, I want to take plant medicine, and how do they learn more about this relationship, and what are some resources or places that they can go to look or find out more information on that spiritual relationship in the with plant medicine?
Hmm. Go to the plants.
Go to the plants.
um, I, I mean, I love Kat Courtney's Instagram feed. She
Okay.
also has a book. I think it's called Plant Medicine Mystery School, which I actually haven't read yet, but I've heard amazing things about it, and I just love her. She's like really great
Yep.
for information.
Okay.
And then I would say for me, I think along the way, like I've definitely looked at stuff on Google and, Instagram, but a lot of my most profound, memorable learnings have been by sitting with the plants themselves or sitting with elders, holding the space for me to sit with the plants.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I would agree. Kat is very eloquent, and so descriptive about all the different flavors and textures and personalities and energies that come along with so many different medicines, actually. And yeah, I'll go through waves where I try to find the right books, and I'm always listening to podcasts and such. But it is, you start to develop an internal intuitive system to be drawn towards, like, what is actually helping you understand what the frick all of this is, right? And the entire process around taking medicines. So yeah, being in nature, being quiet in nature, quieting your mind and being able to listen, really helpful.
Yeah. And I know too, and it's just sit with the plants and stuff. But so what are some of the options out there? Like the ones I know would be like ketamine, psilocybin, ayahuasca, San Pedro, but there are so many different plant medicines. And how do people find out about, like, or do you have recommendations on maybe some of the best ones to start your relationship with? Or
Um,
I know these are all
That's a
big
great
questions
question.
because I'm like,
well,
yeah.
I have a thought. And maybe we
Go
can get into what is above ground totally
Yeah.
legal and you can
Yes.
probably buy at Whole Foods, like cacao, or what is
Yes.
going to take a little bit more time and thought and resources, like ayahuasca.
Yes, that would be
But
amazing. Yeah.
I think one thing to tune into is the calling, right? Do you have a sense, an intuition, something that's drawing you, that's not coming from your mind or your ego, or perhaps that is stronger than that? I have a friend who started thinking about microdosing with mushrooms, and from that moment on, she started noticing mushrooms like coming up in her plants and everywhere she would look in stores, there would be mushrooms, right? And it seemed like they were following her. And I was like, that's a yes, right? Like that's
That's a
pretty good
yes, you should
sign.
try this.
Yeah. What do you
Yeah.
think, Ariel?
Yeah. Definitely. And I definitely hear that there's some people who are like, know that they really want to work with some sort of psychedelic to
Yep.
support them in their healing journey, but maybe they're not comfortable working with something that's not illegal.
Yep.
Legal.
Yep.
So like there's some like cannabis is actually a great place to start if you're looking for a psychedelic plant that is legal in most places to work with. And a lot of people don't think about cannabis as a psychedelic, but with the right setting and intention, it absolutely is.
Yep. Okay.
And then there's psychedelics that are not plant medicines, like ketamine.
Yeah.
And that is legal in a lot of places now too. And a lot of people are receiving really amazing results from kind of like this Western clinical approach to working with a psychedelic, to working with ketamine. And then, you know, there's underground practitioners where you can work with a variety of different types of plants or fungi, and then you can travel to work with a lot of the plants legally in other parts of the world.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's awesome.
Amanita muscaria is legal as well.
Right. Yes, it is.
What's it called?
Mushroom. It's a type of mushroom. So Amanita muscaria. So that could be a place to look to.
Huh. I haven't heard of that one. Yeah. And with some of these things too, because I know we've talked about it, and like I know we kind of all know about each other a little bit more, but for those people who are on a healing journey, how does plant medicine assist on that journey, and how can it help?
Mm-hmm.
I'm asking from a broad sense because I know what it's done for me, but I don't yes.
You mean the journey of life?
Yes, the journey of life, or even just a healing journey in general, trying to feel better, like get rid of anxiety, be more grounded, figure out your purpose in life, and how can plant medicines help with those aspects?
Mm-hmm.
It's a great question. And it's so many answers, right? I think a lot of it depends on which medicine you're sitting with. But let's see if there's some blanket ways that we can describe. I mean, I know one thing for me kind of touches into shadow work, which is the stuff that's in our subconscious or our blind spots. We sort of know that something might be driving us or hurting us, but we can't really see it or get to it. We certainly don't understand it.
Yep.
It can be really, really scary. And so plant medicine is super helpful for me to actually kind of strap on all the gear and do the deep dive, right? Like to have the light and the air tanks and, just start having support and wisdom. And again, just like voices that are coming from a higher consciousness than I normally occupy, to help point out, well, have you thought about this? Okay, you've had a hard time sitting with this pain. Let's do it together. I'm going to sit with you until you go through this. And there's a lot of calls from the medicine to feel the stuff that we don't want to feel. And that's part of that tunneling, that excavation, and discovery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they can be super resourcing, like almost like a lubricant. And like, right, we're like not alone. We're like in this with this other like being that's holding us. And also I think a lot of these plants will help us really feel into connection, and just like oneness with nature. So you can start to feel held by a lot of things. I also really find that they bring us into places that we've never been or could not even imagine.
Yeah.
So it could be places that are really scary. It can also be places that are like the most ecstatic, blissful places we've ever experienced. And, you know, for the places that are really scary, it's like, okay, that's actually something that's already been living inside of us that we've been so resistant to feeling, we've been suppressing. And I can guarantee that it's acting out in a lot of ways in your life that you may be unconscious of. But it's like it brings us into those places to open it up and free us. And then if we might go into a state that feels like so connected, so blissful, so peaceful, it's like, wow, that memory lives in our body now. We know that that exists, and we can practice feeling that way outside of the medicine space, outside of the journey space.
Yeah. Yep.
Super good point.
Yeah.
Well,
No.
because it's
Yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying 100%. Yeah. That's, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I remember being a teenager and taking acid and realizing that it was just opening the doors, right? And
Yep.
none of this medicine is actually putting anything into our consciousness, but it is helping it expand so that we can perceive more, so that we can feel connected to more, so
Yep.
that we learn and understand more.
Yep.
So, yeah, you start to, I feel like being in that rhythm, it almost starts to feel like you have superpowers, like you can walk through bigger fires or whatever comes to you or is in front of
Yep.
you in a different way.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's like great for introspection, self-awareness,
Yep.
building our nervous system's capacity to hold things. It can also like cause our bodies to actually somatically release things. Like, you know, you might shake a bunch or cry a bunch or yawn or laugh, and it's like releasing stuck energies that are within us.
Yep. Yep.
And I think it brings us back into this like interdependence, interconnection that is a reality of being human, this we-ness, but particularly in the culture that we've grown up in, there's a lot of I, and it actually makes us really sick.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like we all have individual root systems that aren't connecting. And, mushrooms are a great example of literally helping us build new neural connections and pathways, right? Getting out of old patterns mentally, physically, socially, emotionally. And therefore, then we can build so much more community and have different relationships with other people who are also healing, right? Like that's why the medicine is coming up so much now, I think, is because
Yep.
we really use all that.
Yeah. And even personal experience, that's what microdosing has done for me. It was like I was on a journey and dealing with so much, and it definitely expanded for me. My nervous system, I could handle a lot more, and I had energy and a new, like, it didn't change me in any way. And I think another, maybe we can talk about some of the misperceptions, but I think when you talk about plant medicine, people are automatically like, you're tripping? What do you mean you're like, no, that's not what, that's not what it means necessarily. Like, you can go to those other levels of consciousness, but it's also not. There's microdosing all these plants as well. So, yeah, what are some other misperceptions that people might come up with?
Plant medicine.
Well, I guess one thing that just pops into my head is that it doesn't even always have to be with a plant that alters, you into an extreme altered state of consciousness. Like, you can work with rose, you can work with cacao, you can work with oak tree. I mean, you can work with all these native plants. You can do plant dietas and learn a ton and heal a bunch working with non-psychoactive plants too.
Yep. And that's also a great point, and could be also a great place to start for people to start, like, I don't grounding themselves, or just get used to it type thing. So
Yep. I would also say another misconception is that the ceremony is the biggest part of the show.
Yeah.
I think it's sort of the prettiest part of the show. It's the most interesting, and in some ways dramatic, but every time I take medicine, it's another reminder that it's actually the preparation and the integration. It's how we metabolize the experience in our lives that is the real show. I mean,
Yeah.
again, it works together, right? We're not doing this work in a lot of ways without the medicine beside us, but it also isn't ever really the thing or enough to just do a ceremony and leave it at that, right? Like it's always showing us the work that we need to do.
Right. And people are often so focused on like the question, how many times have you sat with ayahuasca or mushrooms? And it's like, well, what are you doing to integrate these experiences? I've met people who have done 100 ayahuasca journeys and nothing has changed in their life because they're not doing any integration.
That's a phenomenal point that you both bring up. And again, I think I've touched on this. It's like thinking that it's literally the magic pill. It's going to fix me. This will be it. And yeah. So just kind of knowing, and I think, Ariel, you gave me this advice actually, and it's the medicine will give you what you need always. And that applies to everything. And so taking out expectations of what you think, your healing is going to look like in general is also like a thing to touch on too. But yeah.
The whole paradigm of fixing, I think we're super attached to it in modern culture.
Yeah.
And I find in all kinds of holistic and shamanic medicine, it's a pretty different paradigm.
Yep. How would you say you do prep and integrate? Because we're talking about how important it is, and it's funny because that's what people do talk about is the main event. But how do you prep and then reintegrate to make sure you're getting what you need, but integrating what you need to change into your life?
I think it's helpful to do that with a coach or a guide that can help you reflect, and also who might know the medicine and what it takes to prepare. For me, I often think of that process as sort of like walking to the door of the temple. So you want to make sure that your clothes are clean, like you're clean, basically your body and your meat suit are clean, right? Going in, you want to try to start getting real about your intentions and why you are taking this medicine, why you're going through this process, the kind of healing that you want. And then there's another thing that, what am I forgetting, Ariel?
Well, I think for me, my preparation can vary depending on what medicine that I'm going to be sitting with. I'm a lot stricter with diet with certain medicines than others. And that's just me. But there are certain medicines that you have to clean up your diet to sit with them, like ayahuasca. And then, so I mean, really just like Athena said, being mindful of what I'm consuming in my body, mentally, spiritually. And, I think I have learned the hard way to stop having intentions focused on what I don't like about myself and what I want to fix, and instead have my intentions oriented to what's the actual outcome that I want. So orienting towards what feels good, that does not mean that you're going to avoid what's difficult, but you can save yourself some really, really difficult times.
Oh my goodness. It's all part of the process, right? Like
Yeah,
everything's everything. So
it's
you
been
are
one of the lessons that I need to learn over
right.
and over, you know. So
Yeah. Yep.
Same. And I need I have to work a lot with doing things right.
Yep.
So I have a lot of rigidity around the preparation process sometimes, and they'll remind me, just relax, like your heart is in the place and you're going to take the steps and do the things. You're also going to make mistakes and get things wrong, and you'll still get to the door. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
so yeah, it starts when you hear the call and you have the intention, you sort of make the choice. And then even things that aren't like in the box of preparation or the ceremony or integration, it's still part of your process. Like you're still starting the journey of, okay, I guess I need to look at this more, right? I guess I need to heal this.
right. Like I've had so many times when I've committed to ceremony and then shit starts getting wild in my life. I'm just like, oh my God, it started.
I think that happened to me too. I was like, what is going on? I don't understand.
Things I feel like the way that I think about it is it's like a process of what the medicine is going to work with you with is starting to like come to the surface. It's starting to get ready to be worked with.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
and then for integration, it's so important to make time to just like be quiet with yourself.
Yep.
For rest, to like listen to what's happening in your body, your mind, your heart. And I don't think there's, like there's a lot of information out there on like, do this practice for integration.
Yep.
I don't think there's like one practice for integration. It can look like so many different things. It could be like journaling, walking in the woods, dancing, doing somatic breath work or self-touch. Like it could be any particular practice, but it's really about making space to let the energy settle, move through you, to continue to hear what wants to come through, because a lot of information and energy is still moving after the journey itself, particularly in the next like few days. You're still like really energetically open.
Yep.
Yeah. What do you have to add, Athena?
Yeah, I love that. And it's reminding me that there's a mindset, right, that you sort of enter into with the integration, that, as she said, you're still listening. And the medicines often teach through contrast. And they're sort of corralling you or showing you that there is a choice to be made, right? You could do things the way that you've always done them, or you can try to incorporate, digest, use some of what you've been learning through preparation and the ceremony to make a different choice. And that does take a fair amount of mindfulness. Sometimes it smacks you right in the forehead and you have no choice but to improvise and try something new. And other times it's more subtle, right? And that stillness and that quiet is super helpful so that you can really try something new.
Right.
Yep.
Right. And it's like, what commitments are you going to make to yourself? Like, what lessons have you learned in your journey? Like,
Yep.
what choices, like what you just said, are you going to be making going forward? And also, sometimes you can come out of ceremony and you can be rocked. You can be really raw. You can be really dysregulated for a while. It doesn't always happen, but it can happen. And you can be very confused and feel like your life has been turned upside down on its head. Definitely recommend not making any major life changes for at least 2 weeks, if not longer, after a really big ceremony that's rocking your world.
Yeah. I thought you were even going to say months, because yeah.
I mean, like sometimes though, I've had ceremonies where it's just like I know that there's a change that I have to make, and it's so clear to me, and I'm still going to give it some time, but I know. But there might be other things that, like, I've had stuff get really rocky in my relationships after ceremonies sometimes. And there can be an initial, like, get rid of the relationship, it's over, but often there is just a transition that needs to happen, and like an integrating of how I've changed into the relationship.
Yep.
It doesn't mean it's over, even if my mind might go there.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, because it's a process of embodiment, right? So that just naturally takes time and repetition, mindfulness, observation, right? Like that's how we would do it if it weren't initiated by plant medicine as well. It's kind of a similar process. So
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And then I think the thing that can be so helpful sometimes when you do have ceremonies that rock you, of talking to someone who is like really experienced with that particular medicine, is sometimes what happens can be really confusing.
Yep.
Like you can be given messages or see things, and it can all just be like, what does this mean? Like a lot of times the medicines work in symbolism. There's a lot of exaggeration that can happen in ceremonies. You cannot take everything that happens literally.
Yes, no.
You can also not take all the messages literally.
Yes, I was gonna say, what's kind of what's an example of some, if you guys would want to share, but a message that you've gotten or received that you were like, ah, only if you want to share.
Yeah, I definitely have a couple of examples I can give. One was a ceremony I had where I was convinced that the person next to me had ran off into the woods and died. And there was a lot more story that I won't get into around it. But what that ceremony ended up being about for me was the huge responsibility of facilitating medicine spaces.
Wow.
And like the huge responsibility and risk. And I needed to go through a process of feeling my worst fear, that
Wow.
I'm holding a space that someone dies in. So often the images that we can receive in medicine space are meant to bring up the feelings we need to feel.
Okay. That makes sense.
There's that integration. You still have the interpretation to do, right? Like they're not necessarily, it's not going to be like a 1-to-1 ratio all the time of like, do this, okay, I'll do this, or this means this. I had a ceremony where I was sobbing uncontrollably, purged in almost every way, a very difficult and meaningful relationship to me. And right after that ceremony, the medicine put this movie in front of me that had the person that I was grieving. And it was a picture that I didn't have in my head. And I was like, wait a minute, didn't we just spend all that time with me like letting go of this person? Why are you showing me this?
Yes.
I don't get it.
Yep.
And it took me a little while and some guidance from my teacher, who said, well, yeah, of course. It wasn't asking you to not love this person. It was asking you to not be attached.
Yeah. Yep.
And yeah, of course you can love him, right? It's safe to love him now because you're letting go of that attachment. And I was like, whoa, right?
Yeah.
That wouldn't have occurred to me.
Nope.
Yep.
Yeah.
Too. And for people who don't have knowledge of plant medicine, I think, which is most people, because if you're not having these conversations all the time, you wouldn't know, but is that whole spiritual process. And so like in the sacred relationship that people who do serve the medicine have built up and stuff. And can you guys touch on a little bit of that, what it means to actually be in service and working with medicines and being able to serve the medicine, and because I think you guys have facilitated some retreats in Peru, Costa Rica, and like what does that actually mean versus just going in like, I'm just going to take this quick fix and I'm going to go heal myself in this like quick week journey.
I want to make sure I have the question right.
Yep. No, and it's we're just asking about the whole like the sacred part of it. Like I think people hear plant medicine and there's a there's just no knowledge of it being sacred, basically. And but it is. And the people who serve plants and facilitate, there's actual like training and like you say, working with the plants for some people lifetimes. And so just touching, I guess, on that aspect of things and what that means um in general, I guess, to like thinking about taking plant medicine. Yeah.
So yeah, both Ariel and I have teachers who were trained in Indigenous lineages or born into Indigenous lineages. And there is a lot of time and a lot of living and a lot of experience with the medicine and them learning from elders, right? That whole process with lineage. My teacher was studying pretty hardcore for about a decade in Peru before she came to this country and studied more. And you're sort of always studying, right? I think on this path you are always working on hearing better, listening more acutely and connecting more. And then, of course, you have your own work as a human that the medicine is constantly asking you to do. And I've found that that is my really bottom line in terms of choosing someone to sit with is, are they doing their own work? Do they have a lived and embodied experience of integrating this medicine and this wisdom?
Yep.
I know Ariel has a lot to
I don't know if I have a lot. Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely initiations that people should go through to really safely hold these spaces. And I think there's particular medicines that might be more forgiving, like it doesn't it feels, I'm not going to just say safe, I'm saying safer to hold space with mushrooms than say ayahuasca.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, there's so many conversations in this field right now of like, who can be serving? You can't serve. Who, like, just like pointing fingers. And, ultimately, we all end up giving ourselves permission to do something. I mean, you could also be training with an elder, with an Indigenous community that then gives you permission to serve.
Yep.
In the ways that they've trained you to. But I think similarly to what Athena said, like if I'm looking for someone to sit with, I want to know that they've been doing and are still doing their own work.
Yep.
I think the most important thing in holding these spaces is that you can ground into the vibration of love to the fullest degree that you can as a human, that you have skills in like protecting spaces and clearing energy, and that you've either already had a bunch of guidance, training, supervision from an elder, or you're currently receiving supervision and guidance.
Yeah.
That and have done and have sat with medicine yourself a lot. There's a lot, especially in the clinical Western world. I mean, with plant medicine on more the shamanic side too. Like there's plenty of people who like have maybe sat with the medicine once or a few times and then are serving it. And to me, that's insane.
It wouldn't make me comfortable sitting with someone. It's like
to each their own,
Yeah. No way. I was like, oh my God. Yeah. That I think the trust aspect is a huge deal because you don't know what to expect and don't know can be different every time. So yeah, you really want to know, yeah, who
And
you're,
energetically, you're super open
yes.
during that time, right? During ceremony and the days surrounding it. And you're very vulnerable in that time to
Yeah. Yep.
stuff that's floating around that's
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
less than positive and
Yeah.
needs a source of
Yeah.
energy. So yeah, it takes, I think, quite a bit to be
Yeah.
really safe and protected in the ceremonial space and in the process.
Yeah.
Yeah. And something I'm thinking about right now is like, I almost want to know that the person holding the space for me knows how how big of a deal it is to be holding these spaces. Like
Yes.
that they're not just going in being like, oh, whatever. They're like, there are some risks involved here. Like, yeah.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Really.
100%. And I also too want to touch on, I know we discussed this a little bit, but the whole like political aspect and can you guys have so much knowledge of but there's talk now about like coming out with synthetic almost like remaking the plants, and then there's all the indigenous people where this is like a normal. Can you touch on some of these topics that um yeah, can you just touch on some of these topics because there's a lot there, and trying to understand how indigenous people feel about, you know, like this becoming more and more popular in Western, I guess, Western culture and stuff like that. So
Mm. Ariel, when you travel to Peru and you're working with indigenous people there, do you ever get a sense of how they feel about
So I would say that the people that I'm working with in Peru are really happy that the medicine is spreading.
but
And they're really happy that Westerners are wanting to come and train with them because a lot of their children are not wanting to train.
interesting.
Because their ways, their culture is being impacted by colonization, right? So it's like the kids now are seeing other ways of living,
Yep.
and a lot of these communities don't want this knowledge to go nowhere. And I'm sure that there's lots of communities and people that have other ways of thinking about it. This is just the ways of the people that I've been working with and sitting with.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think, I just want to say, like, I definitely don't feel like anywhere near an expert on what's happening politically.
Okay.
I keep a pretty like peripheral awareness of what's happening, but what I am very aware of that I have a lot of grief about is how like everything in America, profit drives things, and plant medicine is now being colonized, and like how are we making space for indigenous people, for elders, and in these states where there is legislation coming in for legalization, like who's getting to decide who's allowed to legally serve, who makes the trainings
Yeah.
that these people have to take, where does that leave shamanic practitioners, where does that leave indigenous people?
Yep. All
We're looking at that in Massachusetts, right? There is a PAC that has filed for a ballot initiative to come up in the near future about decriminalization and sort of proper usage of natural psychedelic medicines in this state. So that would be mushrooms, huachuma or San Pedro, ayahuasca, and iboga or ibogaine.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's coming.
But you make such a valid point, Ariel, is like, but like, who's allowed to serve that? And like, what's gonna happen? Because I feel like the whole ceremony and spiritual part is like critical to your healing journey. And so how do you maintain that? I don't know the answers, but I hope that people are having these conversations and stuff like that. So
yeah, right. I mean, we feel that here. I have been talking to some of the organizers of that initiative. It is heading hopefully towards legislation. I mean,
wow.
Massachusetts will have to answer the question within the next maybe 5 or 6 years of how we do this.
Okay.
And I'm obviously advocating for shamanic practitioners and Indigenous elders to be part of this community, part of this process. And there is thought towards that. That's
Good.
in. I think what I want to watch is that what you just said about what we assume or know, believe, take for granted about spirituality being an important piece of the process. Not everyone feels that way.
No,
right?
and you can't control that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think what I would like to see is enough inclusive space and flexible codifying such that the whole spectrum of how people practice and how people take this medicine can be safe in some way.
Yep.
For me, part of why the shamanic and Indigenous path is safest is because of the energetic component.
Yep.
Because if you've been under psychic attack or you've an entity attached to you, your aura is still full of holes. Like that kind of stuff is not going to be like, you can't express any of that to a Western clinical practitioner and have them help you repair that, right? That's not going to happen, but it's something that's very much a part of this path and can happen fairly frequently. And there are people out there who can help you with that, right? And so I want all of the voices to be in conversation and well represented. And for me, we wouldn't have any of this medicine if it weren't for the tradition keepers, if it weren't for the lineage holders. We are standing on their shoulders. And what I hear time and time again, I have a friend who's in conflict resolution who was just recently in Colombia and helping, Western clinical stakeholders speak with Indigenous people. And he's not deep into the medicine, but he was just completely overwhelmed by the generosity of spirit of the Indigenous people, how kind they were and how excited they were to share the medicine. Their ask was that people were trained by them in the lineage so that they could hold it sacredly. That was their ask. It wasn't, please don't do this.
Yeah.
It was like, can we just show you how to do it well? Right?
Yes.
That's it.
Yep.
So that I think is the least we can do, if not have them leave this conversation. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Is listen and take it at the very least, again, equally with all the Western scientific research that comes forward about the therapeutic benefits of this medicine.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's awesome. So I know I could talk to you guys forever about this topic. I love it. But just in closing, do you have any advice or anything else that you want to touch on about just plant medicine in general, whether that's people looking to start a journey or advice or last things to say that we haven't touched on in this conversation?
What comes to me is that more is not always better. So more journeys, more medicine. Go gently, go slowly.
Yes, I love that.
I love that. And I would just encourage people to find that warrior spirit in them and be ready to do the work, ready to do your own work and have the work continue. Because that's why, right? That's why the medicines are here to help us and guide us, is so that we can become more and more loving.
Yep.
And more and more whole. So
I love it. And the only thing I'll add in just for my own journey and experience is take out your expectations and just go with the intention of healing, but take out the expectations of what you think is going to happen, when doing it. It's been a own personal learning for myself. So which I'm sure a lot of people may go through when they're on a healing journey.
Totally. And I think there might be a certain degree where it's impossible to completely get rid of the expectation.
Yes. Just know, and I always go back to what you say to me, and it's like the medicine will give you what you need. And
if you
always have that in your brain of I'm getting what I need from this, and it's going to show me, and accept it at that.
Yeah, and it will flip the script on you. If that's what you need, and you go in and you're like, oh, I'm gonna do the best shadow work possible. I'm gonna hold it down. And then it gives you rainbows and unicorns, and you're like, oh, not whatever. Okay.
I definitely had the reverse happen to me so many times. I'm always convinced it's going to be the hardest night of my life. And then I'm like, wow, this can actually be easeful and joyful. Wow. Thank you for that reminder.
Yeah. Every time I go in and I'm like, I'm ready, and I feel like I have all my weapons with me, and I'm like, I'm totally excavating. They do not give me that at all. Gentle, and I'm like, then again, there's that contrast in the position. They're still trying to teach me. It just was my own expectations that I bumped up against. So good point. That's a great point.
Yeah. No, that's just from personal experience. I think I was pouting like a bratty 5-year-old, but experience.
Maybe it was helping the bratty 5-year-old stuck within you that didn't get to pout enough out to pout and be seen and validated and loved. That's what the medicine does. Yeah,
it did. And that's why it was funny, because then that's where you talk about reintegration. Right after it, I was like I said, the pouty 5, or I didn't have a journey. Yeah, right. I had the reintegration and being able to have the self-awareness and self-reflection to be like, oh, okay, it gave me what I needed in the moment. Yeah. And just, and keep the healing journey going. So, but thank you both
so much for having us. So fun.
Yeah, this is amazing. I love talking about this, and both your information will be listed in this, and then but any questions or things that people have, I'll direct them your way, and I just think it's a great topic of conversation that I would love to keep going. So thank you both so much for coming.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you so much for taking another holistic view of your health with us. I hope you've really enjoyed today's discussion, and as always, take control of your own wellness journey by exploring the practitioners and modalities available near you or on our directory at www.holistichealthcollab.com. Don't forget to subscribe here so you don't miss an episode, and you can also find more holistic health tidbits at Holistic Health Collab on Instagram. Please leave a rating and review to help us reach more people that might need to hear this information. If you have any questions about today's show or any ideas for future episodes, or if you just want to reach out, you can contact me directly, Kate Maslowski, at kate@holistichealthcollab.com. You can just put podcast in your subject line. Again, thank you so much, and I hope you have a great day.